ladies and gentlemen, Ron James.
How you doing, everybody? You all look great. Probably because this past year has been so relaxing and low-key. What the hell just happened? Britain went clear off the beam. America lost its collective mind. When it comes to crazy countries, you know, things are getting bad when North Korea's got to settle for the bronze. It's information overload. We've been drowning under a media-driven tsunami of such bilious swill. I need an army of specialists, skilled in the brain's terrain, to hose me off, roll me in clover, pat me down with baby powder while I unplug, tune out, and just watch a puppy chew on a slipper. You don't know whether to check the headlines or stick your head in the sand, do you? The news bombards us with so many explosive clashes and disturbing patterns, it feels like we're looking in Don Cherry's closet. Talk about a twisted period of history. These terrorists didn't even need to make bombs. They could just buy a Samsung 7. I'm telling you, from the political to the personal, seems the only guarantee in the world these days is change. You know, when I first hit the road, I used to go for a few post-show pints and make a dent in a bottle of scotch. Now I have a couple of post-show Tylenol and make a dent in a bottle of Gatorade. But as much as people change, nations change, and Canada is changing too, isn't it? We're turning 150 this year. Yeah, that's our sesquicentennial. Yep, we're sesqui and we know it. 150 years seems like a long time, but compared to those other countries around the world that are 1,000 years old, Canada's just had our first wet dream. And its name is Justin. Our last Prime Minister couldn't smile, now the new one can't stop. Mr. Sunny Ways, isn't he? First few weeks in office were a whirlwind. He was a going concern, greeting refugees at the airport, taking selfies with the Pope, dinner at the White House, photo shoots in Vogue with Sophie. He was so many places at once, I thought they were cloning him. I did. I went home to visit my elderly parents in Halifax. Walked in the front door, saw Dad sitting alone at the kitchen table. I asked him, "Where's Mum?" He said, "She's up in the tub. Justin's giving her a bath." And Justin and Sophie were everywhere you look. And come summer, Justin was everywhere shirtless. A family out hiking met her stripped to the waist PM coming out of a cave in Gatineau Park. And that same week, on a beach in the West Coast, a bare-chested Justin photobombed a couple's wedding pics. I felt sorry for the groom. Jeez, talk about a cock block. Who do you think the bride's gonna be thinking about in her wedding bed, though? Buddy she just married, or the chiseled spawn of Neptune who just sprinted out of the surf? It's kind of strange having a prime minister who's an international sex symbol. Geez, the only time Harper gave millions of women pleasure was when he left office. But Justin, geez, when a new PM hits the scene, there's always a buzz in the air, but it isn't usually coming from a handheld machine that needs a battery. When it came time to unseat Harper, you know, there were some voters just asking themselves, who would I rather look at all day? Justin or Thomas Mulcair? Let me see. Do we go for the guy who could be an underwear model or the one who looks badly in need of a rabies shot? Why do you think so many conservatives were dying for Peter MacKay to be their new leader? He's the only Tory who looks like he could lean down to kiss a baby without wanting to eat it. But at least we finally got some cosmopolitan style in Ottawa, huh? Of course, Justin's flair for cool is born in the blood. When his father Pierre dressed up for a night in the town with a starlet on his arm, geez, he looked like a cross between Zorro and a pimp in a zoot suit. You gotta have a pair of steel ones to pull off a cape at the Grey Cup. Of course, there's no escaping what's happened in the United States. Dear God, within a week, the Chicago Cubs broke a long-standing curse and the American people elected one. Republicans have been inbreeding with the lunatic fringe in their party for so long, they finally sired something that should have been kept in the attic. Huh? The GOP spent the last 30 years poking that gorilla in the cage called the silent majority, and when they finally picked the lock, out marched Donald J. Trump, a ranting, racist, fork-tongued, misogynist, fire-breathing, billionaire, bully bullshitter from the television set. Isn't that where the monster came from in the Poltergeist movie? They're here. Trump doesn't even look human. I've seen better comb-overs on a merkin. Look it up. No surprise the Republican convention was so unhinged. Geez, between the Duck Dynasty hats and the assault weapons on the floor, the only thing missing from that fascist hoedown was Hermann Goering and Lederhosen turning a pig on a spit. I'm not even sure Trump can read. What's going to be in his presidential library? Copies of Art of the Deal and a couple of crusty back issues of Penthouse Forum? The man has changed the media landscape forever, though. I hear Aaron Sorkin's already working on a new show. It's called The West Wing Nut. I wish I could cover every single malignant statement that danced from his gilded cake hole during that cage match of a campaign. But I'm only doing an hour, not a miniseries. The Donald is America's bare-naked id run amok. He said women who get abortions should be punished. Beg to differ, bucko. The only woman who should be punished is Donald's mother for not having one. The presidential debates, they were the most watched in history. Trump said he didn't do well in the first debate because there was a problem with his mic. Yeah, it was turned on. But that mic on the Access Hollywood bus was working just fine. Of course, Donald called his disgusting comments locker room banter. No man talks like that in a locker room unless you belong to a gym just for date rapists. Well, I guess Bill Cosby has to work out somewhere. No one could ever accuse Hillary Clinton of not wanting the job. You just know back in the 90s, she'd see Bill sitting in the Oval Office and think to herself, "You're in my chair." One thing's for certain, if Clinton had won, we wouldn't have to worry about the leader of the free world trying to make a grab for Angela Merkel's crotch. At least not that Clinton. Of course, the American media has to wear some of the responsibility for the Donald's rise. He got 10 times the coverage of Bernie Sanders in the beginning of the campaign. From CNN to every Fox News pinhead preening for the cameras. Trump got the treatment as befitted a Roman consul, having his prunes powdered in a Pompeii spa by a gaggle of serenading eunuchs, while poor old Bernie was stuck on the back porch eating leftovers trying to unionize the kitchen staff. In some ways, Bernie and Trump were two sides of the same coin. Voices of the disenfranchised, only the dark side of the coin won. Trump didn't create the chaos created him. He's a poisoned parody grown from the rage of the betrayed. Because for the past 30 years, the American working class have watched their jobs disappear into a gossamer thin ether to third world non-union assembly line grunts who labor 14 hours a day weaving tube socks and sweatshops for the kind of coin an Iron Age chicken plucker wouldn't suffer. Meanwhile, the rapacious carnivores of the 1% ruling Wall Street have been busy looting everything from retirement funds to lemonade stands, willfully masticating the hopes of the disappearing middle class in an unchecked, unpunished, greedy, free-for-all neoliberal circle jerk where the top gets the meat and the bottom gets the bone. There goes my shot at a green card. I'm in no rush to go there. I like performing comedy in Canada. You know why? Because I can say I ate some muck-tuck buying an uck-shuck and tuck-toyuck-tuck and everybody knows what I'm talking about. And for a long time, it felt like we were the little guy living under Lady Liberty's neon shadow. When JFK and Jackie were dazzling the world as the shining stars of Camelot, John Diefenbaker and Olive were dodging cow pies at a tractor pull in Girvan. Now it feels like Canada's finally coming of age. We stop defining ourselves by what we're not, but by what we are. A sanctuary of sanity in a world gone bananas. Thank you. When we were busy drafting legislation to protect the rights of transgendered people, down in North Carolina, those same people weren't allowed to use the bathroom they wanted to. You gotta love that irony. While millions of Americans argued over where some poor trans kid could take a dump, their entire country was going down the toilet. Now, a lot of us only became aware of trans issues when Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn supported Trump for president, which proves we're on our way to becoming a world where a trans person can be anything they want to be, including an idiot. Because the GOP's become a party where hate drives debate and billionaire brutes pipe the white middle-aged seething masses into states of delirium, promising to rain down biblical retribution on whatever other besides themselves they can find to blame on America's woes, all the while cherry-picking quotes from Leviticus to justify their homophobic, Mexican bait and Muslim hate and gun-loving bigotry and anger as they defiantly march backwards to the foggy mists of time to the wrong side of history, looking to make America great again, whenever the hell that was. Now millions of Americans are scared for their safety and want to come here. We thought our biggest influx of refugees would be from Syria, not Massachusetts. First big sign of sea change, though, was Brexit, when England left the EU. Of course, over in Quebec, a few ripped van separatists woke up from a long winter's nap. But at this point, come on, most of the hardliners are holed up in the home so senile they can't even separate fact from fiction. Just don't mention to them Trudeau is the Prime Minister, for God's sake. Or a night nurse could end up in the trunk of a car. Here's some good news in a volatile world. The NHL, I'm happy to say, is better than ever. It's been yes, it has, hasn't it? It's been revitalized with an infusion of fresh-faced new talent who are delivering exceptional hockey. Of course, you won't be seeing any playoff beers this year. Half the league's too young to shave. Now, because of all those young hockey prodigies in the NHL, the parents of every pee-wee kid playing who pops a hat trick figures he's on his way to the majors. Give your head a shake. You got a better chance of finding leprechaun gold and a box of Weetabix than little Gordy making the NHL. Huh? You do. Let the kid be a kid first, but you can't tell the hockey parents that. These kids are being groomed from birth. Soon as the umbilical cord is cut, they're thrown on a rink when they're still wet. Seal pups get less ice time. At least fighting is banned in minor hockey now. The only place you're going to see a brawl these days is between the parents and the stands. General Louis Mackenzie said the toughest fighter he ever met during all his years of battle was a Serbian grandmother with a Kalashnikov. Clearly, he's never gone toe-to-toe with a Sault Ste. Marie House League hockey mom holding a steaming double-double in one hand and the coach's cojones in another. At a time when we all needed to feel good about the world, though, thankfully, the Summer Olympics in Rio delivered the goods. And our athletes did us proud. They did, especially the women. Yeah, come on. Yes. Yes. Toronto's Penny Oleksiak won a record 4 medals in the pool right before starting grade 11. Unbelievable. Yeah. 16 years old with 4 Olympic medals. You know, my biggest accomplishment at 16 was getting served in a tavern wearing a pair of fake mutton chops and my father's hunting jacket. What about Michael Phelps? In his final Olympic performance, the swimmer cemented his legacy as the greatest Olympian of all time and reminded everyone watching that somewhere in his family history, somebody clearly humped a porpoise. It was cool having the games in a tropical setting. Green as far as the eye can see. Of course, that was just the swimming pools. Didn't that just make you want to go to Brazil, huh? The water was greener than a frat boy's puke on St. Paddy's Day. Oh, no, geez, those poor windsurfers were rolling over more logs than the beachcombers. But it looks like the Liberals are going to make good on their promise and legalize marijuana. Yep. Oh, cannabis or stoned in native land. I had my first toke in years last summer. Afghan hash. I did. I don't understand why they're so wound up in Kabul. After one draw, I could barely tie my shoes, let alone strap on a suicide vest. My father said he's going to start eating marijuana cookies. He's 85 and he's got bad back pain. I said, Dad, give me a call when they show up because we're going to watch the hockey game together, buddy. He'll be following the puck like those cats you see on YouTube. Just a note to the government, though. If you want this enterprise to be efficient, don't have the wake and bakes running the head shops. You want somebody who's going to be able to make change for a $5 bill, not look at it and laugh for an hour at how much Wilfrid Laurier looks like Mr. Spock. The marijuana game sure has changed, though, hasn't it? Yeah, there's so many varieties, and the names, dear. Northern Lights, Purple Candy, Silver Haze, Panama Red. Am I in a head shop or buying paint at Benjamin Moore? Weed has gone so mainstream now, there's reviews of different strains written by actual connoisseurs. Because that's what the world needs, isn't it? A fresh new breed of wine snob. This pink kush has subtle undertones of berry and honey jams. with a woody aroma and a piquante aftertaste that makes it an ideal complement for fish, chicken, or melting your brain to Black Sabbath's War Pigs. Americans proudly declare that in their country all men are created equal. But there's 100 viral videos of trigger-happy cops that prove when you get behind the wheel there, it's a pretty good idea to be white. A white family in a nice car might use it to go to Target. A black family in a nice car is a target. Everybody has a certain amount of cop fear, no matter what their age, no matter what their color. It's encoded in their DNA. Because nothing wrecked a high school graveyard drinking party faster than hearing this: "Run, cops!" And look, I'm talking Canadian cops, not the law of the land south of the border. That's a whole different kettle of fish there. I'd sooner a Mountie SWAT team arrest me for carrying a truckload of crack and a box of tiger cubs than be stopped by a state trooper in Mississippi for nothing at all. Because if you're pulled over and you see that Smokey the Bear hat and aviator shades coming at you with a Smith & Wesson riding shotgun in his hip, you'll get a tiny hint of what a black man feels like driving in America every day. You want to put your hands where I can see 'em, please? On tail plates. Well, well, well. We drive at miles per hour down here, not kilometers, boy. You one of them Canadian snowbirds coming down to Florida, ain't you? Well, actually, I know what you all about up there. You people is all left-wing free healthcare supporting, serious terrorist welcome, handgun hating, same-sex loving, harmony, ain't you communist, ain't you? Well, communism is actually a far cry from Canada's social safety net for the less fortunate and her progressive mandate of inclusion as outlined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, sir, which espouses the same mandate as your Constitution, except we don't defend those values by perpetuating our frontier myth of the avenging gunslinger through weapon worship that's metastasized into a malignant cancer we now call mass shootings, fueled by the vainglorious notoriety the mirage of social media sustains in your celebrity-driven culture. You don't think I actually said that to the cop, do you? Jesus, give your head a shake. I told you Buddy had a Smith & Wesson on his hip. I went for a walk in the park the other day, and I was amazed at all the people I saw out and about. Gee, it made me feel good. There I was in bucolic splendor with my fellow travelers on the all-too-human journey we call life, feeling kinship, connection, and hope, until I realized, hey, they're all playing Pokémon Go. For those of you not familiar with this latest craze, Pokémon Go is a game for people who want to see brightly colored monsters in the trees but are too cheap to shell out for a bag of shrooms. You play it on your phone using something called Pokeballs to catch pocket monsters. Yeah, that's right. Pokeballs and pocket monsters. This is what it takes now to get kids to go outside, is it? Because what better way to appreciate the majestic wonder of an old-growth oak than by banging into it because you were distracted chasing a Squirtle? Now, a Squirtle, by the way, is one of the pocket monsters you Pokeball. That's why not a lot of guys my age are playing the game, because we're already getting up for a Squirtle 3 times a night. Aging's when your body starts to turn on you. It's just the beginning of a festival of indignities. I put myself in traction one night for turning wrong on the pillow. I did. The pillow. Of course, I sleep like a beagle who's dreaming he's chasing rabbits, but... You've done that, right? No? Just me? Weird. The best sleeps of all were those ones you had as a kid after a full day of playing shinny on a frozen lake, with the sky a perfect blue and the sunny day casting shadows long as life itself, when those now gone were flesh and blood and Kodiak boots were goalposts with your dad playing nets. I'll never forget that. Whoa, you remember thinking, nice save. He's pretty good for an old fella. He was 38. Well, the older you get, the more the hits just keep a-coming, don't they? Trying to put your socks on first thing in the morning without shooting pain in your back becomes a feat only a contortionist could handle. I could scarf a Robaxacet, but then I'd be taking 4 pills. Already taking Crestor for high cholesterol, Tecta for acid reflux, and Cipralex because I'm nuts. But, oh no, if I wasn't on the Cipralex, my whole show would be this. Whips up the bee, the buck, buck, bah. Whips up the bee, the buck, buck. Whoop, whoop, whoop. But I don't want to fatten the pockets of Big Pharma any further, so instead I went to hot yoga. Hot sex works as well, but I didn't want to pay for that. Hot? Even my sweat was sweating. Within 5 minutes, there was such a huge lake of water around my mat, I'm surprised Nestle didn't come to stake a claim. Now, hot yoga is supposed to flush the toxins from your system, but so is juicing, so I gave that another whirl. But I forgot to disinfect the spinach before I put it in the juicer, and I got a case of food poisoning. Yeah, apparently spinach is never to be eaten raw. I didn't know that. I found out fast enough, because those toxins were flushed all right, all night long, clear till dawn. I had the kind of colonic propulsion Iron Man would envy. Everyone dreams of having superpowers. I just didn't want them in my sphincter. I was just walking around like this, right? And I just went, oh. I think I just shit my pants. But here's the other thing. When it's happening, the first explosive bout you have, when you basically become a human bazooka. You're secretly impressed. Oh my God, look what I can do. I was shamaning. That's shitting and vomiting at the same time. See, you learned something scientific tonight. So I checked myself into a downtown Toronto hospital with the food poisoning. During a full moon. Good move, Ron. I went to use the can. There was a homeless wolf man scrubbing his junk in the sink. He was doing the towel floss too, right? I donate clothes to the needy. I'm pretty sure he was using my old hockey jersey. But after the food poisoning, I was put on a bland diet for 2 weeks. You know what's good about a bland diet? Nothing. When has the word bland ever been used to describe something great? Dry toast and plain yogurt. I was eating food so white and simple, it could have voted for Donald Trump. You know, the whole world seems to want more Canada, or at least their water. Been reading up on that? Companies like Nestle have been draining our water tables, dead gulch dry for a song. Of course, if we're giving away our clean water anyway, why don't we give it to our indigenous communities? Thank you. Right on, man. There's better sewage systems in Somalian refugee camps than 2/3 of the reserves in Canada. Some residents have had to boil their water for 20 years. You'd be safer drinking from a pissed-in puddle at the Mogadishu dump than drinking a glass of water at one of Canada's northern boreal gulags. How hard can it be, Justin? It's plumbing. Take a course at Home Depot. I'll guarantee you this, if brown water was coming out of the taps in a Tony Blue Blood corner of Canada like Westmount, it'd be fixed faster than a horny horse on the Mounties musical ride. Progress is for everyone. Europeans moved here for a second chance, and that's a good thing. What's not a good thing is that many Indigenous people born here are still waiting for their first one. It's been 150 years since we called ourselves a country. About time we started honoring the treaty so we can finally call ourselves a fair one. At least we finally have a government that's willing to admit climate change is real. So refreshing after spending 8 years living under the dark cloud of Mordor. Huh? Jesus. But each year is getting hotter than the next one. Poor Mother Nature's like a wallflower trying to get noticed at the high school dance. But now she's been sitting there so long, she's hit menopause and having hot flashes. When the last of the northern tundra turns to slush, it's gonna fire out more methane than Chris Christie's ass after a night at the Mandarin buffet. The Arctic is actually melting so fast, last summer a luxury cruise ship was able to tour the Northwest Passage for the very first time. And to focus on the positive, they named this historic vessel the Crystal Serenity. Crystal Serenity. It sounds like the name of a New Age meditation tape you'd pick up at a lawn sale. The polar ice cap is disappearing forever, but all I feel is crystal serenity. This is the thing that got me. When reporters asked the passengers if they were enjoying their trip, they all said the same thing. It's great to be able to come up here, but I was really hoping to see more ice. The world is having a meltdown, but all I feel is crystal serenity. Pretty soon, the only polar bear that's gonna be left will be roaming around a field of Saskatchewan canola in a Pangdertung zoo, waiting for the crowds to leave so he can choke the chicken in peace. What else would you do if you're the last polar bear? You'd be so sad, everybody's gone. The only thing left that's fun would be to masturbate. Everybody be standing around the cage. Quit looking at me. I haven't done that joke in 10 years because I got some mail about it. But he was really indignant too, right? I really enjoyed the show until you did the masturbating polar bear. That was one step too far. Well, that's my native name, so get used to it. I get it, though. I get it. Being kind to the earth isn't always easy. I try my best to buy the environmentally friendly products, but a lot of them suck. They do. Those green dishwasher cubes, they never work. You'd be better off handing your plates beneath the table for the dog to lick. I bought environmentally friendly ant killer. Yeah, it was so friendly it never worked. I want raid results. Kills, bugs, dead. The only way to kill them using that was to squash the bastards with the bottle. But don't give up hope. There's strides being made. At the Green Living Show in Toronto a couple of years ago, I saw a machine that collected and dehydrated solid household human waste. You mix it with hay, wire, and epoxy, and you make lawn furniture out of it. Apparently, it's all the rage with the high-end, socially conscious Hollywood eco crowd. Leonardo, your patio furniture looks like shit. I started composting a few years ago. There's your lease on immortality. Come see the soil, kids. Hard to believe last fall it was Uncle Henry. Look at that. We're all gonna die, but when you do, don't have your loved ones leave your ashes in a jar on the mantelpiece. You have them work them into the soil. A shovelful of use, a miracle grow, a little bit of moo-poo. Come October, the potatoes have your eyes. We never know what's in our food, though. Not so when I was growing up, because Dad hunted. He shot it, we ate it for dinner. Simple. Rabbits, duck, partridge, deer, moose. When I tell friends in Toronto what was on our kitchen table growing up, they think I was raised by the Inuit. They do. To this day, unless I'm picking fur from my teeth at the table, I don't feel like I'm being fed. I read that Canadian baby boomers stand to inherit the most money of any generation in history. $750 billion. Guess what? I'm not in that $750 billion tribe. I'm inheriting 23 pocket knives, 3 sets of deer antlers, enough fishing twine to string a net across the Pacific twice, and 57 pounds of Robertson head screws and mason jars. Okay, I'm just bragging now. It may be boom time for boomers, but the millennials have a tough road ahead. They got the shaft. Canada's housing market is red hot, and they're the ones getting burned. You know, the average cost of a detached house in Toronto is now $1.3 million. You leave an empty refrigerator box at the side of the road in that town, and it sells for $50,000 over. Millennials will never be able to afford a house of their own because they've got the highest amount of student debt in history. My daughter told me the only college in Canada that has a 95% guarantee of job placement after graduation is the Circus School in Quebec. That's true. Home of North America's greatest entertainment institution, Cirque du Soleil. Yeah, no surprise it started there, huh? These come summer in old Montreal, every street corner's filled with some busker doing something. Last time I passed through, I watched a rummy take a shit in a hat before I realized it wasn't a show. The storied history of Quebec makes it one of the premier founding nations of Canada. Champlain planted the flag in New France after crossing the pond with a boatload of ex-cons, social outcasts, a goat, a few cartons of chickens, and a pair of sexually frustrated Jesuits. And you think taking a trip on a Greyhound bus can get weird. They were a motley crew of lost souls looking for a better run at a new day in a new world with nary a clue how to do it. Oh, that's serious determination, isn't it? How do they not lose their minds? I'm ready for 60 cc's of Thorazine and a padded cell after trying to set my PVR. Let alone surviving that first winter of bone-bruising little ice age cold in Montreal. After that, a man would be damn near whimsical with nostalgia for the vermin-run, refuse-choked, stinky streets of France, where a slop pot dropped from a top window on your noggin was just another way for the syphilitic harlots in the whorehouse above you to say good morning. Canadians are authentic, and that's a word getting thrown around a lot these days. People go on and on about being their authentic selves, don't they? They tweet about it, write about it on Facebook, then go on dating sites and post a profile picture so airbrushed it might as well be a van mural. Searching for love online is the new normal. And boomers are trolling the internet looking to score some action before the Reaper calls their bluff. Buddies prime the pump for Saturday night, chasing 10 cc's of Cialis with 2 fingers of single malt. Hoping to grow some trouser timber. Thanks to Eli Lilly's root booster. After 30 minutes, his priapus is so defiantly rigid, a monkey could do chin-ups on that member. And coupled with the amber powers of that Scottish wizard juice, he's verbally dexterous as Robbie Burns, 2 stanzas away from talking a petticoat off a Hebridean milkmaid. Now all he's got to do is land a trophy trout on Plenty of Fish, or else he'll be reciting sonnets to himself, riding a handcart all weekend long. Meanwhile, she's doubling down on sites like Match.com, hoping this next cup of coffee at Starbucks will be her Prince Charming, instead of another lonely divorcee just like her, carrying more baggage than a Kikuyu porter in the Belgian Congo. She hopes he'll be kind and sweet and fun, and not really believe her profile when she said she liked camping. What she really meant by camping was a 4-poster bed in a Spanish hacienda with Egyptian cotton sheets overlooking the Alhambra Palace, where she's lullabied to sleep by nightingale songs the very Moors who built it would have heard on moonlight evenings long ago. That's the kind of camping she meant. Not sharing a pup tent with a flatulent, snoring stranger in a provincial park on a 3rd date she really wishes now she hadn't slept with on the first one. I worry that living in the information age is making us simple, though. Oh, you need any proof? One of the biggest trends of the year? Adult coloring books. Yeah, adult coloring books. Finally, something to display next to the adult diapers. Coloring books for adults. Now when you hear crying in a restaurant because someone's crayons got taken away, probably coming from a 47-year-old divorcee who hasn't finished filling in her unicorn. Well, she gotta cut the stress, because we're getting too much information, and most of that information is useless. The 24-hour news cycle is so used to filling time with manufactured news content, they no longer have the resources to report the real news content, because they're too busy producing the made-up news content. They need to meet the content demands of 24-hour news. You turn on the news channel and tweets are rolling by at the bottom of the screen. Since when did the headlines require backup? Get rid of the tweets. If there's been a chemical spill, I want to hear what a chemical engineer has to say about it, not Patty from Truro. We're filling our brains with 90% of the hot dog that isn't meat. How else do you think a wiener ended up in the White House? Nothing happens overnight, and the march of history travels a long road. And you can't talk about Canada's history without talking about the fur trade, when our roads were rivers, sneaking through a forest primeval, home to hardy voyageurs, paddling along in a stocking cap, singing songs and smelling ripe as an old diaper. Bonjour, bonjour, je suis the voyageur. Bonjour, bonjour, je suis the voyageur. La 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 la. The pills have worn off. La 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 la. Yeah, voyageur, there's a gig, sign me up. When you weren't running widow-making rapids that could pulverize your spine to the consistency of tapioca pudding, you were portaging 75 pounds of pemmican on your back, cross a Canadian shield, shackled to feudal servitude for a pauper's wage. Ironically, they were still paid better than most millennials are today. Our ancestors were in it for the long haul. And it makes you appreciate what the early prairie pioneers went through. Mind you, the settlers got a great deal. The property came for free. Why? Well, because pork-barreling corporate fat cats in the pocket of imperialist Ottawa politicians who legislated government greed, fueling the prevailing Victorian myth of Darwinian determinism and its doctrine of racial superiority that justified dominion over indigenous peoples, cloaked in the economic policies of late 19th century colonial paternalism, stole it. Canada was created by a pack of anonymous legal eagle windbag lawyers who P.E. Islanders plied with lobster and liquor, put them together at a kitchen party in Charlottetown and wouldn't let them leave until they came out with a hangover in the country. And I'm sort of paraphrasing, but that's pretty well how it happened. But you gotta love this country. Truth be told, I'll take the asphalt humming beneath my wheels up here any day. These past 20 years spent stringing my trap line across the big wide open, I felt the salt spray in my face from Cape Spear to Haida Gwaii, where the hidden boons accrued, engaging the heartline hum of people and place, was heavenly manna for a hungry pilgrim that delivered a currency beyond measure, finding a far deeper purchase well beyond a payday's treasure. I crossed my father's country in Newfoundland and a dozen autumns gone, when turning tamarack needles had wrapped the rock in a halo gold as a ruler's crown. When on a night in Old St. John's, I heard the island's soul note loud and clear, as faces flush with pints of plenty rose in ships in chorus, while the man of 1,000 songs sang his ballad to the city's haunted harbor that wrapped me in a blanket of belonging to something far bigger than the gig that brought me there. One thing's for sure, you don't visit Newfoundland for the weather. Oh no. Camped in Grossmore National Park last summer, the winds kicked up overnight to 106 kilometers an hour. Damn near blew my tent to France. It's a wonder I didn't wake up with a croissant in my sleeping bag and an arrogant attitude. I said to a local fellow the following morning, that was one hell of a storm last night. But he replied, yes, boy, stiff breeze. On the other side of the country, you'll get a whole different kind of buzz. Look at Nelson, BC, across the Great Divide, home to fresh-faced, heart-warm neo-hippie chicks, kootenai ski bums and nomads and America's exile sons who dodged that southern draft during Tricky Dickie's war with $50 in a Volkswagen van and Bob Dylan on the 8-track. It's where I felt menthol-cool breezes dance down from marshmallow white mountaintops, tickling the nape of my neck with the softness of a lover's kiss, where eagles were hatching, bears were scratching, and Sasquatch mothers suckled their young in secret groves of elfin underbrush. Okay, that's a lie. There were no bears. Now, there are certain cultural peccadillos unique to different regions of Canada. In towns beyond the Pale, I've seen trucks on whose bumpers hung a pair of plastic testicles. You can be damn sure if there's a fake set of nuts on a bumper, there's a real dick behind the wheel. In the northern realms of the Yukon and beyond, the senses are stirred up where energy expended is energy returned. There's a statue in the main square of downtown Whitehorse commemorating the Klondike Gold Rush of 1898. It's a bearded and bedraggled sourdough miner with his trusty mule whose plaque reads, "Dedicated to those who follow their dreams." That's inspiring, huh? But what the plaque doesn't tell you is that the first winter in country, he was forced to eat that mule and lost 7 toes to frostbite the night he went cuckoo with cabin fever and ran apeshit nude through the snow with a sled dog wearing a bonnet singing "My Darling Clementine." But come on, who hasn't done that, huh? And sometimes when the road gets old, there's someone you meet who lightens your load and lets you know why you answered the call and you're on it in the first place. I played Whitehorse a few winters back and hung out for a couple of days afterwards in a cabin 2 hours outside of town at Tagish Lake. It had been unseasonably mild that January, and I was following wolf tracks in a light dusting of snow from the night before up a mountainside, communing with nothing but my breath and my heartbeat. A few hours in, I noticed grizzly bear tracks. Perhaps a bear had come out of hibernation with the warm weather, feeling somewhat peckish, and was looking to snack on a human Snickers bar. Geez, I saw those, turned on my heel, and made a beeline for the road, remembering I'd been too quiet, knowing you gotta make noise so the animals will hear you and not gobble you down. I broke into Battle Hymn of the Republic at the top of my lungs, and because I'm Canadian, I knew every verse. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. But I made it out of the woods, got into my car breathless, drove back to the cabin, slept the sleep of the dead, and I woke refreshed for my drive back to Whitehorse the next morning. And it was one of those dawns in the north you only get way up there, huh? Where the champagne air bites your lungs like a Mr. Misty from the DQ. And Orion is sitting so clear on the horizon in the dawn, his sword looks sharp enough to cut you. And driving past a scattering of houses on my way to Whitehorse in this town called Carcross, I see a lone figure standing beside the road with a thumb out, hitchhiking. It's 6:30 a.m. on a minus 37 Yukon morning. And soon as I pass and stop the car, and I'm thinking, hey, Ronnie, give him a lift. If it's a serial killer, it's going to take him an hour and a half to get the butcher knife out from beneath the layers of Gore-Tex. Oh, I back up in the car, open the passenger side door, a hood comes back, and it's the weathered face of an ancient indigenous woman. She looks at me and says, "Whoa, good vibes in here, eh?" She tells me her name's Helen, and she's on her way to Sunday church service at the Salvation Army in Whitehorse. We start to talk. "What are you doing way up here?" "Well, I was working in Whitehorse, and I had a few days off, Helen, so I hung out in a cabin in Tagish Lake and spent some time hiking in the woods." "By yourself?" "Sure." "Whoa, God was watching out for you." Why?" "Well, the mild weather's has the bears confused. They're coming out of hibernation early and they're hungry. Something's eating the dogs down by the lake and taking everything but the head." Remembering Kwakiutl folklore of a shape-shifting she-bear who kills and eats her suitor, I'm thinking, geez, I hope the story's not based on her, otherwise she's gonna make a hell of a mess of this rental car. I said, "Oh, no worries, Helen. I was singing Battle Hymn of the Republic at the top of my lungs, and my voice is so bad, every wolf or bear in 120 kilometers would have had their paws over their ears." Her hands go up and, "Ha, ha, 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 ha. You should be a comedian." At a time when fear of the other hit a fever pitch and millions of people around the world couldn't find a home, Canada rolled out the welcome mat. Look at the Syrian refugee crisis. We opened our hearts and borders, taking in over 25,000 people with more on the way. And the first wave who stepped off the plane at Pearson, gee whiz, they were greeted with stuffed teddy bears and hugs and kisses from Justin and Sophie. Sure, by the time the seventh wave arrived, all they got was a box of stale Timbits and a DVD set of Little Mosque, but it's the thought that counts. You know, it's been said that the canoe is the perfect metaphor for the Canadian character because it's quiet, adaptable, and it gets the job done. And when it comes to enjoying the woods and water, whatever your nationality, we're all floating in the same boat. I was canoeing with my kids at Killarney Provincial Park in Northern Ontario a few years back, and the lake was covered with paddlers of every color and creed, embracing that primal call of nature we all know holds the secret code that defines the collateral of the Canadian soul. It's what makes us us. Our canoes converge on a portage trail. I got out to pull it ashore when I hear, "Better behind you, better behind you." I turned to see four University of Toronto engineering students pointing toward the forest. "Better behind you, better behind you." And because I've watched far too many episodes of Homeland, with kooky-eyed Claire Danes perpetuating xenophobic fears that would have us believe there's an Islamic terrorist behind a counter at every falafel hut, I pushed the thought out of my head that these innocent U of T students who just happen to have Arabic accents are really Al-Qaeda campers headed in-country to liaise with an American sleeper cell so they can shoot a Stinger missile at the president's plane when he goes bass fishing in Atikokan. Then I realized, geez, that couldn't happen. Trump doesn't fish. And that's too bad. But there's a traffic jam of nationalities at this portage trail. It's unbelievable. There's a dozen Jewish kids on a summer camp canoe trip. A Jamaican family right over there is pitching a tent on an island. 3 canoe loads of Koreans with their country's flag flying from a makeshift mast in the middle thwart. "Better behind you, better behind you." And as I see the bear sprinting across 60 yards of open ground, something else catches my eye seated in the canoe beside me. Sweet Jesus, it's an albino Korean in a canoe in Killarney. How many magic mushrooms would the group of 7 have had to swallow to put that on canvas? Again, better behind you, bear nothing. That bear could be coming out of the woods riding a unicycle, carrying a monkey on his shoulders, playing the cymbals, and I would not bat an eye. Because here, on a lake in the Canadian Shield, on a sunny day, is a 1 in a million genetic miracle in a canoe in Killarney. My youngest daughter says, "Dad, stop staring, that's racist." Racist? Race has nothing to do with it. If I was Korean, I'd be staring at an albino Korean in a canoe in Killarney. And then I have that moment of most human connection when eyes meet and differences fall away. A moment where we're both just Canadians. And being the good Canadian I am, I smile, look at him and say, "Geez, buddy, that sun's some friggin' hot. You should be wearing a hat." Happy 150th birthday, Canada. Thank you very much. RonJames.ca